Welcome to Games from Folktales, a podcast that mixes historical research and tabletop role-playing settings. I'm your host, Timothy Ferguson. This week, Mythic Cheshire, The Basics. This is the first episode in a series that's going to assemble month by month into something similar to the Venice book. The current structure I'm working on is more beginner covenant, something a little bit like Triamore from the previous edition. Cheshire is a traditional English county that's just to the north of Wales. Its county town is Chester, which is in the far west of the county. Chester was a Roman fortress, and it was used to pacify the people in what is now North Wales. In 1220, Cheshire is a different shape from what you'll see on modern maps. Two parts of northern Wales are part of Cheshire in 1220. Eventually, Edward I chops them off to create what's now called Flintshire. It also heads out east into what's now Derbyshire. The long tail that spreads to the northeast of historical Cheshire is a mountain valley called Longdendale, and that's going to be our initial focus because a useful set of folktales in audio have fallen into my hands. Having said that's our initial focus, I'm now going to ignore it for the rest of the episode. Cheshire is a legal oddity. In 1220, it's treated as if it's not quite English. As an example, the Magna Carta doesn't include Cheshire, so the Earl adds his own charter to take its place. The Earldom of Cheshire is palatine. That is, the holder of it acts as though they had the authority of the king, unless directly countermanded by the royal household. This is rare in England. There are a few others, the Bishop of Durham, the Earl of Lancaster, and there's a rough equivalent on the Welsh border, the Marcher Lords, and in the Duchy of Cornwall there's something similar as well. This is one of the reasons that the English king takes the opportunity to grab the title in 1254 and eventually pass it on to his son. You'll notice this was the general policy of the royal house. In 2025, the Prince of Wales is the king's heir. This is a leftover from a move to make the Marcher Lords far less important. The Duchy of Cornwall is vested in the Prince of Wales, and the Duchy of Lancaster is held by the monarch, but very carefully it's not part of the Crown estate. It's where the royal family keeps their completely independent money. Cheshire is effectively this weird little pocket kingdom that spreads out into what's now North Wales, and that makes it useful for Ars Magica. Chester was a major Roman settlement. The recent archaeological excavations of its amphitheatre are useful and will be used as a site, as a plot hook. Similarly, there are prehistoric ruins scattered around, and they are folkloristically attributed to the Druids, and they'll serve as plot hooks. This is not the Caerleon that was given as the site for Camelot in La Morte d'Arthur. This is the City of Legions that's mentioned repeatedly in the stories. Those stories will be stolen. Some Cheshire historians claim that Geoffrey of Monmouth moved Camelot from Chester to the other Caerleon because his patron owned the other one, and let's leave that aside. We'll use that as a plot hook so that people reading the book in their sagas could use it, but there is a sleeping king in Cheshire folklore already who I would like to examine separately. The nobility. In 1220, the Earl of Cheshire is called Ranulph de Blondeville. He's off on the Fifth Crusade, along with most of his barons. Yes, he has barons. Some of you may be thinking, no, in England, barons hold directly from the king. Well, not in Cheshire. Cheshire once again does its own thing. By his death in 1232, he's a dinosaur. He's the last holdover of the Anglo-Norman nobility that served King John, and he held on with his French culture and weird language, despite the changes of time. He's also the Earl of Lincoln, and he's one of the great magnates of the realm. Technically, he's able to call up 110 knights from his lands in England, plus another 80 from his lands in Cheshire. That's a quote, and you'll notice that, according to that, Cheshire's not in England. He has no son, so his lands are divided up between his 4 sisters. His territory, therefore, effectively explodes into pieces, which the king's quite happy about, because one of the most difficult parts of being king is not being done in by your senior nobles. The title we're interested in, and the chunk of land in Cheshire, go to his elder sister, whose name's Matilda. Well, they go to her son, and his name is John of Scotland, for reasons which are complicated but might be important given the differences in Hermetic culture near the border. Matilda married David of Huntingdon. Now, Huntingdonshire is deep in England, it's down near Cambridge, but he's the third son of Henry, Prince of Scotland. Huntingdon was a dowry given to David, Earl of Huntingdon's grandmother when she married the King of Scotland, David I. They keep using this name David, so it's very confusing. David, Earl of Huntingdon, had a father, Henry, who was the heir to the Scottish throne. But he died before his grandfather, King David, and so when King David died, his lands were initially divided so that his eldest grandson became King of Scotland, his second eldest grandson became Earl of Northumbria, and his third eldest grandson became Earl of Huntingdon. That third eldest son, who's a David, just to make things even more difficult, passes it on to his son. So this means that John of Scotland is the Earl of Cheshire, by right of his wife, and he's the nephew of the King of Scotland, and the King of Scotland is also... And because the eldest of these three sons has died, the Kingdom of Scotland has passed down to the second son, William. And that means that the King of Scotland is also the Earl of Northumbria, which is just fantastically unhelpful when you're the King of England and you're worried about border wars with the Scots. It also means that John of Scotland is ridiculously independent because raising the North against him is virtually impossible. William I, William the Lion, really doesn't want the English mucking around in his business. The role of Constable of Chester isn't in the Earl's gift. It comes directly from the king because Chester's a royal castle. It's held by John de Lacy, who inherited it from his mother, but had to pay an enormous fee because legally it's not inheritable. It's in the king's gift, and he gave the king a lot of money, so the king chose to let him inherit it. Enough of that, though. He is also off on the Fifth Crusade at the moment. The coat of arms of the de Lacys is a purple lion on a gold background. Badly drawn pictures of this on pub signs are one of the, historically given, sources for the image of the Cheshire Cat. This leads to the question of what I'm going to do about Alice in Wonderland in these stories. At the moment, I don't have any plans to use her, despite the fact that there's great art and that I use public art and it's Rackham. But the problem with Alice is that the first book of her adventures is based on a set of playing cards, and playing cards haven't been invented in 1220, and the second set is based on a modern Queen Powerful chess set, and that doesn't exist until Unification of Spain. Also, I've already sold the Jabberwock to another role-playing game, Magonomia. Go check it out. And I prefer not to recycle material I've taken money for. De Lacy's going to be less active in Cheshire after 1232, when he marries and becomes the Earl of Lincoln by right of his wife. You might be thinking, wait a minute, wasn't Ranulph de Blondeville also Earl of Lincoln? How did this guy marry to get... Did he marry this guy's younger sister? It's even more complicated than that. I'll put it in the book, but I'll leave it for now. It's easier with a diagram. A quick note on religious foundations. In 1102, the Bishop of Chester decided to move his cathedral to Coventry, which is great news for magicians because that drops the Dominion. He does technically have a co-cathedral still in Chester. Well, I say in Chester, actually it's outside the city, across the river. Once again, this doesn't do great things for the Dominion or in the city. More points to the Magi. The biggest, most significant church in the city is the Benedictine Monastery of St. Werburg. I've got to learn how to pronounce that, actually. It's probably Werbro. Anyway, if you look at a modern map, that is the Anglican Cathedral in 2025. However, it is far smaller in 1220. St. Werburgh, whose name I will have to learn to pronounce, is the patron saint of Chester. And she is represented, both in terms of pilgrimage tokens and in some of her miracles, by flocks of extremely aggressive geese, which I look forward to using. I think that will be an enormous amount of fun. That's your lot for this week. Your saga may vary. Actually, I say that's your lot. There will be at least one other episode this week, possibly two. I'm having trouble with the Monster of the Month for next month, so I may just release it early. Anyway, your saga may vary.